Hi friends, I'm Olga Koelsch and welcome to my studio. I'm very happy to announce that my book How to Paint Watercolor Transparent Flowers will be translated into Spanish, Italian, French and Japanese languages very soon. And I also hope that soon will be a German translations, fingers crossed. For today's lesson, I invite you to paint a rose, a beautiful pink rose in very easy, very relaxed style. If you haven't touched watercolor for the whole summer as I did, let's paint it together and enjoy our watercolor flowers. So let's start. Let's start painting our rose from about center, and I will use quinacridone rose as my only color, but I will use it in different proportions. Firstly, I will start very bold and dark to show the most shade places, and I start to paint with my smaller fine brush. I carefully create these smaller inner details. They are the darkest on your picture. I just look at the picture, try to arrange them relatively similar to what I see in this similar order. Now I will dilute a little bit my quinacridone rose, and I start to add a little bit bigger petals around. If I feel that I have too much water on my brush, I just dab it on my paper towel and remove the excess water. I move my brush. I don't paint like this. I slide my brush with about its 2/3 of the hairy part around, and I try to follow my reference to imitate the move, the arrangement of the petals. It's mostly feels like I'm painting with brush strokes, just brush strokes, sea looking brush strokes mostly. In the upper part of the rose, because it's a little bit tilted, we don't see much of the petals. We see just small ribs of the petals, and I paint them just with tip of my brush. The more I go to the bottom, the bigger I can see the petals. That's why I would like to start with tip of the brush, and then I apply a little bit more pressure on my brush and create a slightly bigger petal. If something went wrong and you lost yourself, or your petals are not looking exactly like on the picture, this is completely fine, because you're creating your unique rose. You just need to understand the basic structure of the rose and try to imitate it as much as possible. So I'm moving from the center of the flower towards the edges. I vary a little bit of thickness of the petals. I also would like to add a little bit of shades. To add shades, I just grab just a little bit of paint right from the pen. If you paint from tubes, right from your squeezed paint. And then I go along the edges, which is supposed to be in the shade. I can even paint it with the brush next to this watery area. I let everything mix, move. I want to paint in pretty loose style, so I trust my watercolor. Sometimes our watercolor knows better what it's supposed to be, but we need to know some basic techniques to also to have some control over it. It's nice when you can move your hand, your wrist and your brush in different directions, so your brush strokes will be different, not flat, with some nice curves around. I always like to add some white space for the contrast, and don't forget to vary the mixes. Now I would like to paint something more diluted, more light. I think this is not enough light, so I washed my brush, I removed a paint, I left only water on my brush, and that's how I dilute it. If I realized right on the paper that something went a little bit wrong, so I can do here a little bit of painting. Now it's time to paint bigger petals. You can either leave your brush or switch to a bigger one. I like to paint with synthetic. It's a little bit of matter of preference. Many artists prefer to paint with natural or natural imitated brush. I think it's worth to try different types to make your decision about that. So with bigger brush, I just make the same brush strokes around, just looking on my reference and trying to be a little bit close to what I see. Firstly, I paint just the bigger areas of the petals, and it would be handy if you have your second brush next to you, so you can add shady areas right here, right when you are painting. Add some variety. You can move a little bit your paint towards the edges, or you can just let it as it is. Have a look at the reference where the shades are mostly noticeable. Then you can wash your brush and soften a little bit. But my idea for this painting was to let it be more spontaneous as possible, with almost no corrections. Let's see how it will go. And I encourage you to try painting like this. Maybe take smaller pieces of paper and paint in this sketchy technique. It will help you to understand your brushes better, to understand your colors better, and also it reduces the fear of mistake a lot. So now let's paint. Here we have few pretty big petals, so I add more water on my brush. I start, it's more like painting the watch. So I start with tip of my brush, I go around, I create this big petal. And I will create the other big petal. Round, very soft, very smooth. I switch to my other brush and add shades. In this style, when you paint petals by petals, this technique gives you a little bit of time, so you are not too stressed that things will get dry and you would not manage to add some corrections. So I encourage you just to try that. Also, it's nice to paint with one color because you are not too stressed with mixing colors when you have limited time. Once you paint 10 roses just in one color, you can choose blue color, for example, or green color for the variety. You will get better feeling, and then you can start to mix this and make your work more and more complex. So I add some shades. Sometimes I apply more pressure on my brush, and this is nice. Now we have few petals around here and one big petal right here. Let's start with the left one. With the top one. As we move out of the center, I try to make petals lighter. Firstly, because they are under the sun, they're mostly exposed to the sun. And secondly, this is our focal point. Flower center is our focal point. And we shouldn't paint all these super details for everything. If we do some details around, that's enough. You just try to follow the main shape of the flower. If it is too difficult to paint like this without pencil, no, it's no problem at all. You can draw at least basic shapes, flower flower center, or some main petals. Everything what makes you more confident. I like these moments when color from the previous petal goes into another one. Find it very cool. So I might even help a little bit around, make the tonal. So everything what makes you more confident is great, and then you start painting easy for you, and then you increase and add some difficulties, add some challenges step by step. I want my flower to be a little bit shifted. I went a little bit up to the top right, so I want to add a little bit of thickness. Not thickness, just the size, to increase slightly the size of these petals, so it will be a little more proportionally nicer. So like this. Now let's add shades. It's the fun part, because it's just beautiful to observe how paints play with each other, how they distribute, how they mix in. We can purposefully add a few drops of water into relatively dry areas, so they will later create blooms. I know sometimes you hate these blooms and you try to avoid these blooms. I added shades just with smaller brush with shades while the paper is still wet in this darkest part. The sun shines from the top, which means the bottom of the rose is mostly in the shade, and there is also own shade from the petals, so don't hesitate too much. Add a little bit of thicker, bolder brush strokes around. And have a look at your rose. I would like to add second layer, just some, would say not layer, second layer of brush strokes to the center to make it more pop up, because it's a little bit lost. I use my pretty bold quinacridone rose, and with the tip of the brush I'm checking where can be bolder areas, and I paint them. This point you can improvise and maybe add some details to your painting. It's probably a bit too late to tell, but I hope you can always rewatch this video. It's always important with watercolor to start very light. The lighter you start, the bigger room you will have for corrections, because it's very easy to add darker colors than bolder colors, which you probably already realized. But nevertheless, we will try to add a little bit of crispiness just to the center. If you start to do all the extra addition details to everywhere, it will lose the moment, the special approach. So you can just don't go too much, too far from the flower center. So now I'm looking where can I add some bolder colors, some shades. I can go with the tip of my brush, add a few brush strokes around. At this moment it's almost okay to use paint right from the pen, maybe just with a little bit, with small drop of water, because we need the boldest color of what we already have. And it always helps to look through the camera whether it is nice. I like it. I like how it turned out. I just want to add maybe a little bit of idea of this bent area here, just because I have a better feeling of that. I will add some splashes, maybe even like this on the top, so it will create some softness, unevenness, because here we painted pretty bold, and I want our rolls still be looking like that we painted super spontaneously without extra details. And this is actually it. I think I like it by itself. You can always add stem, but I think in this moment it's not necessary. Thank you so much for painting with me. I hope you enjoyed the lesson. I hope you painted nice, beautiful roses. Please leave me some feedback in comments, which flower or which object, what you would like to paint next. I read each and every of your comments. I'm very grateful for your support of my channel, of my book. Thank you so much, and see you next time. Bye bye.